Are we on? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Don MOSITES, co-founder of a company called AirSwap. We are a peer-to-peer Ethereum token trading network based in Brooklyn. I've been based in Paris for about a year and a half. It's been incredible meeting people from throughout the community in Paris and France and Europe in that time. We are a team of deep experience in financial technology and trading and product development. I myself come from a background of early stage technology startups. And today I'm here to talk about the promise and opportunity of building a global marketplace on blockchain technology and what it's going to take to get us there. First, if we think of trade as a platform where blockchain has provided a new economic foundation, we can now tokenize all kinds of assets. We can bring them online and make them available for trade. And it's this trade that enables us to construct a new global marketplace without borders. And therefore, it's risks to trade that risk the integrity of this marketplace. And what do I mean by risk? Primarily the risk of centralized trust. So trading systems today are largely centralized. What that means in the crypto space is that they play roles of bank, broker, and clearinghouse all in one. And as a bank, we trust them to not fall victim to theft and mismanagement because they're holding your funds. As a broker, we trust them not to collect exorbitant fees when they connect traders. And as a clearinghouse, we trust them to settle trades and not act on insider information. So if centralization is a risk to trade, why is 99% of trade centralized? First, because it's good for market makers. Centralized order books offer predictable instant execution and settlement, and it's free to place and cancel orders, and they have low transaction fees. Second, it's good for market coverage. Centralized order books can easily list disparate markets between Ether, Bitcoin, US dollars, and these are the largest, most liquid markets. So knowing what gives these systems strength, we got this, let's decentralize trade. So where do we start? First, we must eliminate risk. Blockchain itself enables personal asset custody, which is incredibly powerful. That is in part facilitated by our friends at Ledger, who I believe are presenting shortly after this. And also trustless settlement, which means to say that between two parties, you can actually settle a given trade or transaction without the intervention of a third party. And the performance and interoperability of those settlements is underway. But we must maintain parity. And what I mean to say is that in order to compete with these centralized trading systems, we must at least meet market making and market coverage parity. That is to say that it must be good for market makers. We must offer predictable execution and settlement. And there must not be costs to placing or canceling orders. Also, market coverage. We must support many markets and quickly add new markets and blacklist those that are fraudulent, regulated, or malicious. So those that purport to be tokens that they're not, for example. And of course, market coverage parity actually requires cross-chain and fiat trading in order to cover those larger markets. But Ethereum is a great place to start because 91 of the top 100 tokens are here. So if we decompose this a little bit into the types of liquidity that we'd like to support for our marketplace, we can think in terms of both fungible and non-fungible. Fungible is to say that a given unit is interchangeable with another, like a dollar or any other currency. And non-fungible, like a chair or a microphone or something, or an asset like a crypto kitty. Fungible, highly liquid assets are for faster, more popular markets, more likely. Fungible low would be for slower, possibly newer markets. Fungible block are for larger trades, and non-fungible being those actual pieces of property that people can trade. If we compare those to the types of trading systems that we have to employ, we have order books, which we consider local, to be locally operated, more likely to be regulated because they actually handle orders. They provide shared liquidity and public pricing, which are both very important. And peer-to-peer and auctions, which we consider to be global and less likely to be regulated because they don't actually handle priced orders in most cases, and offer tailored liquidity, which means to say that a given trade is actually for a given counterparty. In the case of peer-to-peer, private pricing. which is also powerful. And in the case of auctions, competitive pricing, which is of course powerful in its own right. So if we match these system types and liquidity types, we can imagine that order books serve highly liquid fungible markets very well. And we imagine that given their likelihood to be regulated, there will be winners in each jurisdiction across the world. They do not serve lower liquidity or block trades or non-fungible assets nearly as well, and I'd be happy to talk more about that after the talk. Peer-to-peer and auctions, we believe, have, given their global nature, there will likely be one or few winners in these types of trade. And peer-to-peer itself does offer excellent capabilities in both high and low liquidity assets and block trades. Auctions, we imagine, are more for larger trades, so you're not going to necessarily auction off a smaller amount of a given asset. And for non-fungible assets, we believe that in peer-to-peer and auctions, there will be winners in each kind of asset. So that means to say that there might be a winner in a home auction network, or there might be winners in a peer-to-peer trading network for video game items. So another way to visualize this is to imagine an important concept we think, and many in the room will be familiar with the long tail. That is to say that on the left at the head you have more popular, but in this case higher liquidity markets, and as the tail grows out you have more lower liquidity markets. Order books themselves can only get you so far because adding new markets to an order book takes assessment of each asset, it takes manual work. We do believe that the scalability into new markets is a very important part of building a global marketplace. And imagine that peer-to-peer and auctions can certainly take us all the way, because providing liquidity for a given market just means entering that market and making trades. So this is the thinking that we had when we were designing AirSwap. And we focused on peer-to-peer. We are a peer-to-peer trading network. We do not run order books. We do run on our own protocol called the swap protocol. And we believe peer-to-peer truly embraces the power of blockchain itself, which is ultimately a peer-to-peer network. On our network, peers announce their intent to make and take markets to an indexer, which is basically a search engine, which makes them available for trade. Other peers can find them by searching and exploring the indexer. You can imagine that if you run a search on an indexer, get a list of prospective counterparties, and ask for orders from each one of them, you can actually get competitive pricing, which is also very powerful for peer-to-peer. If we take a step back on our network, the indexer serving as a discovery mechanism between market makers and market takers. Takers being represented by apps and the people that use their applications. Market makers announcing their intent to serve liquidity to given markets, so they can say they're trading token A. Any taker given one of these apps can search for token A, and this counterparty will show up and they can connect directly peer-to-peer. Taking an even further step back, both sides of the market between market makers and market takers, we see this as the growth engine, where makers are actually announcing their intent to trade given markets, and takers can actually announce their intent to take given markets to signal that they desire liquidity in new markets. In the center, you'll see the what we call the fill incentive, which is a bit understated there. We consider that to be the supercharger of this system, where an individual market maker can price on a given order what they consider the value to have that filled. And so a maker can say, on this order, I would like to pay X amount. If an app actually facilitates that order with one of their users, the app is compensated for that. And so makers have a very valuable tool in being able to pay for trade flow, and apps are incentivized to join the network and make trades. So this ultimately takes us from one market to many. Today we have a front end on a single back end. This is a third-party market maker that we're working with. Right around the corner, we are opening up into a marketplace with multiple makers. We recently announced that we have 3 professional market makers joining the system, and we'll be providing liquidity to 24 new markets. And later, when we talk about additional interfaces and additional apps, and the ability for this network to actually grow around the world and into new markets. And of course, we are still based on Ethereum. This is a great place to be. But reaching true market coverage parity means trying to either represent disparate assets as Ethereum tokens. This can be done, for example, with DAI by attempting to peg to the dollar, or wrapping the native token of Ether as an ERC20 token, representing some kind of redeemable voucher for another asset on another network. We're exploring many technical solutions to do this. It's certainly an interesting conversation to have. And then also per-trade atomic swaps, which I think are a little bit more cumbersome, but they certainly are good for likely peer-to-peer block trades and things like that. So there is a bright future for trading beyond Ethereum, and we believe that it's actually pulling more and more assets into Ethereum. But second, we still have to make sense for market makers. And to reach true market making parity for peer-to-peer and auctions, because execution and settlement is generally between peers, it is naturally decentralized. On an order book, though, execution itself, we believe, must be performed by a central authority in order to preserve price-time priority. And therefore, or I mean, alternatively, some kind of consensus mechanism, but it would be orders of magnitude slower. And so that's why we believe that trustless order books are likely impossible. And to, well, that does include every implementation of a 0x relayer, but many others as well if you're trying to build an order book on a blockchain. They still have a role as semi-trustless venues for establishing market value, which is certainly a very important role in a global marketplace. So, knowing the opportunities and the roles and the possibility of working in tandem between peer-to-peer and order books and auctions, we certainly are and will continue to be working together to determine the best designs going forward for decentralized trade, to fully understand market making needs and behavior, because without market makers, there likely are not markets. And something that's very important to us as a community, I believe, is maintaining a shared market blacklist. That is to say, these are the assets that are unfit for trade. Either they're fraudulent, misrepresenting themselves, or in some other way malicious. And very importantly, because this was mostly a technical talk, and I'm actually a user experience guy myself, but establishing best practices in usability and user experience will certainly be very important in making this accessible to a global audience. So together, we believe we can truly unleash a new global marketplace. Certainly welcome any conversations about this and about trade systems and trade liquidity. We at AirSwap fully believe in the power of peer-to-peer, and would love for you to join us. Thank you.